the biggest secret to my success, whatever success I may have had, is aiming for business outcomes.
Welcome to Channel Security Secrets. I'm Lou Rabon. On this show, we expose the untold secrets and critical insights from the people shaping the future of cybersecurity sales in the Trusted Advisor channel. If you're looking to up your game around selling security, stick around. Channel Security Secrets is brought to you by Cyber Defense Group, on a mission to shift cybersecurity from reactive to resilient. Hi, everyone. I am eager to chat with our guest today. He's an entrepreneur, industry veteran, and channel sales leader. He's known for building high-performance teams and driving results for industry leaders, including E+, Cisco, and NEC. At E+, he revitalized the telecom sales organization, increasing total contract value by $10.2 million year over year. Most recently, he co-founded a new venture in the channel, bringing decades of customer-focused leadership into his own business. He's currently the co-founder of CloudNow Consulting. Scott Porter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Good to have you. So Scott, what's the biggest secret to your success in the channel?
I would say that the biggest secret to my success, whatever success I may have had, is aiming for business outcomes. So when you look at how you interact with a customer, it makes a lot more sense if you're aiming for what the business outcome and trying to understand what your customer is trying to accomplish with their technology. Look, I got into this business because I love technology, but even I don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to go buy some technology that I don't really have any use for. Everybody is buying because they have to get something accomplished. And so your job is to figure out what that is and help guide that conversation and make sure that you're having the conversation about how your technology meets their needs, assuming, of course, that it does.
Oh, how do you determine that? How that if the technology is going to meet their needs?
So that's a great question. So first of all, this is not an approach that you can kind of do on the fly, just walking into a customer. So it requires a lot of preparation, right? I mean, it works well because you're going to you're going to be talking about the customer instead of about yourself, and that means that you have to familiarize yourself with what that customer is like. So I'll just give you a quick example that kind of highlights what it is that I'm talking about. We went into a law firm in New York City. And before we went in, we did a lot of research on law firms of their size, how they were performing against other law firms their size, kind of what law firms their size were running into from a problem perspective. And so we went in and we sat down and we started off talking about them because that's what the customer wants to talk about. They don't want to talk about you or technology. They want to talk about themselves and what they're trying to get accomplished. And this is a great way to make that happen. You go in and you start talking about, hey, you guys have had success doing this, and you've had, you guys are looking good because of this, and you flash up some headlines about the legal industry, and then you follow that by putting up some things that some of these firms are running into from a problem perspective, and then you ask for feedback from the customer about which one of these problems they're running into. And they're always going to have like one or two at least. You got to be prepared when that happens to turn that conversation back around and say, all right, great. Well, let's talk about that problem because here's some things that you might consider in terms of how to solve it.
So basically looking for the pain points.
Yeah. Except that I would say that instead of, because I think pain points has kind of become a little cliche. So I would say what you're really looking for is not just pain points, but also possibilities to improve their business, right? You've got to be talking to them about, there are only three things that they're looking to do: increase revenue, decrease costs, or avoid risk, right? Those are the three things that a company's going to try to do. Nail your product back to specifically, or your service back to specifically how you can help them do one of those three things. It doesn't have to be a pain point. It's something that they need to accomplish that could potentially, lead to a lot of revenue, for example, and turn around their business.
So that requires a bunch of research, I would imagine, to understand their business. Let's say, obviously, if it's someone you've had a relationship with and you've been working with them for years, that's easier. But do you have any kind of tips or ways that you approach this if it's a net new customer that even in an industry that maybe you don't have a lot of experience in?
Yeah, so first of all, this is definitely rifle shots, not shotgun blasts, right? You're not doing this to the masses. You're saying, "I'm gonna go after a couple of firms, and I'm gonna learn about them." If they happen to be publicly traded, that is really easy. SEC reports. You go out and you read management discussion and analysis. You look at at how their executives are compensated, because that is going to drive a huge amount of the behavior within the organization. And once you can figure that out and understand how you can bring that back around so that you're benefiting the goals up and down the organization, you're really going to drive very valuable conversations. You're also going to find that you're going to get higher in the organization and you're going to create a lot of trust, right? Because you're not just talking about the latest thing, you're talking about how the COO gets compensated. Well, he's going to have an interest in that conversation. And so you're going to create a lot of trust. You're going to have business conversations and not just technical conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you can nowadays you can use AI for that. You can
Absolutely.
leverage kind of yeah. Are you doing that?
I do. And we do, we have a subscription to one of the AI providers. In fact, I think we might even have two, where we go out and we do some research. Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to take that research and I'm going to use it kind of like Wikipedia, and I'm going to find the sources rather than just trusting what it kicks out to me. But it's a great way to at least get a quick overview and find sources that are going to provide you with good information pretty quickly.
Yeah. So essentially, doing the research, doing the homework, not looking at this as a transactional sale, but really looking at it as a solution sale, that which seems to be really the way to go to get in deep. And then you're going to start speaking to the C-suite or at least above the director of IT, et cetera, who could influence the decision. But when you start getting higher in the org chart, obviously you're going to be speaking to the decision makers that really hold the purse strings.
Yeah, and that's the goal. And when you're at that level, there's a lot less negotiating and going back and forth, because they're going to create a relationship and they're basically going to direct that the people that work for them work with you on whatever it is. Now, I mean, there are situations where somebody might swing around on the back end, but typically, if you're dealing with a decision maker, you've got a lot better shot at not getting shopped. And I will also say that it creates an irreplaceability factor, right? So you always want to figure out. I mean, if all you're doing is selling somebody one or two transactional things, you're replaced pretty easily. If you've got your fingers in there and you're really talking to them about business problems and they're relying on you, you're not very easily replaced.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. And hence the term trusted advisor, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want to bounce things off you. They want to bounce things off of you and understand, kind of what your take is, because you understand them so well and you're so deep in their business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we see the best trusted advisors do. And how about security? Are you doing a bunch in security?
I wouldn't say we're doing a bunch, but I would say we're making some progress. One of the things, the other thing is, so we started off and we really were focused on UCaaS, CCaaS connectivity, things like, SD-WAN, POTS replacement, those kinds of things, because that's where our relationships were and that's where our history was. We really want to get out of that and start doing security. And so this is actually another good way. Once you gain somebody's trust, you can move outside of that core that you're already working with, because they're going to recommend you to other people within their organization.
Yeah. Traditionally, though, the security team is hard to crack, especially when you start moving up market. So, have you been able to do that?
We have some. We've had CIOs refer us over to CISOs and start having those conversations with CISOs, because we already understand certain aspects of their environment and we're able to bring some crosstalk to them. And so that's really been our goal, is to let's get those conversations started. Let's talk about the services that they're currently using. We really don't get into product because we're not really product sale people. We want to be selling services, whether that's and primarily we're focused on ongoing recurring revenue kinds of services.
Yeah, good. And it's interesting because you can't actually be successful in security without the IT team or the CIO, CTOs backing. Some orgs report up through them. I'm not a huge fan of that reporting structure. The CISO reporting to the CIO or CTO for a number of reasons. Prefer them to be peers, but essentially they have to work together nonetheless. So sometimes it works because the CIO or CTO may understand that, hey, they're not experts in security. They understand security is important and not a blocker. So yeah, I think that seems like a good path. If you can get the trust of the CIO or the CTO, even if they're peers, they can make a recommendation, then you can move over to the security team.
Right, and the things that are not purely security specific, but might be necessary in order to enable aspects of, let's say, a contact center platform or a UCAS platform, we can bring that expertise over to the CISO and his team and help them to understand what kinds of things that other communications team is going to be looking for. And like I said, do some crosstalk within the organization and kind of help the communication among the different departments.
Yeah. And what about when you get the meeting with the CISO or someone on the security team? How are those conversations going? Are you getting into the weeds technically with them?
We typically not typically, because I'm not really equipped to get into the weeds. So it's a lot more understanding what they're doing from maybe a governance and compliance perspective. Because compliant, if you're trying to sell security without talking about compliance, you're going to have a tough time, I think. And each industry kind of has its own compliance things. So being able to have the conversation, that's another reason why it's pretty important for me to have a business conversation rather than a technical conversation, is because I'm going to be driving toward a business outcome and going back out to my network to find people who can help meet that need, whatever it may happen to be. But the initial conversations are typically what they're trying to accomplish from a governance and compliance perspective, where they see their gaps right now, and how we can potentially help them. And if we can get them to engage, and obviously you got to go in with some knowledge to draw that information out of them. But once you get them to engage, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. So and lean on the vendors, obviously, like us, when you get to that stage of technicality. But um, when you're going in and you're getting that initial knowledge to be able to have those conversations. Do you have any, advice for TAs that are listening that might have never sold security and they want to start? Because we see a lot of that.
Yeah. I think the main thing is number one, so gather whatever information you can, right? Understand and have kind of a framework in mind. The one that I wouldn't say I pull it out in front of the customer, but I try to have it in the back of my mind is the pyramid that, or what is it? The framework that Stefan Semmelroth always talks about.
Oh, the MITRE ATT&CK or defend framework.
Yeah, the cyber defense framework. That's what it is. Cyber defense.
Yeah, yeah, the cyber defense matrix.
Yeah. So I try to have that in the back of my head so that I can kind of draw some, like a matrix, at least in my mind, of what it is that the customer is looking for. And I'll have some conversations with the people that I'm already working with to understand what they think the security environment looks like, and candidly where they're bumping their heads into security, because there typically is some conflict between the IT organization and the security organization. IT tends to look at security as people who stop important things from happening, right? And and security looks at IT as a bunch of cowboys who would open the network wide up if they possibly could. So there is a little natural conflict there, right? And
Yeah, big time.
so understanding that going into the conversation, and not necessarily stoking the conflict, but at least being able to have a conversation around it, kind of helps you to frame what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So again, do your homework. You don't have to be a practitioner or have practitioner level knowledge. There's definitely areas too. Do you have like a go-to like news source, or where are you getting your cyber information or news from?
So for a long time, I was reading a bunch of security blogs, that I had on feeds. Now it's kind of more, I'm watching the news feeds on LinkedIn, which I have set so that I can see a lot of the new security stuff that comes out from our providers, but also just talking to our providers. So, talking to you guys, talking to you know the people that provide
MDR.
MDR, XDR, and those kinds of services, understanding like, all right, so what's the environment with the SIM in my environment, in my customer? What's the environment with their SOAR? Are they trying to activate more AI-based responses and detection? Or because that's, I think, one of the best ways for them to scale. So I'm trying to talk much more to my providers and understand what they're doing and what they're coming out with and how that can integrate into what I have customers doing.
Yeah, I mean, again, you don't have to have deep technical knowledge to understand some of the basic concepts, and I think that's one of the biggest secrets in cybersecurity. People think like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's like, the Wizard of Oz and who's controlling all the things. And at the end of the day, it can be relatively boring. It's basically even beyond the hey AI enabled SOC and things like that. Let's talk about even basic stuff like, are you doing vulnerability management? Have you done an incident response tabletop? I mean, these are the questions that you can ask as a TA, once you get their attention. And when's the last time you had an assessment from an external third party?
Right.
And when they like a risk, how do you manage risk? Do you have a risk register? And is there a way that you're tracking the risks across assessments and things like that? And these are the most boring, basic things that most companies are not doing well, believe it or not. And you'll get and that's the other thing about security is that it's definitely a door opener. I mean, if you talk about UCAS or CCAS, it might say, "Hey, we just signed a 5-year deal. Speak to me in 4 years," or something. But if you pick up the phone, it's gonna be the rare, especially C-suite executive that's like, "Oh, yeah, we got security handled. Nothing to talk about." You know?
Exactly. But, it's funny that you say that it's, boring because early on, I went to some meetings with customers, and they had board members who were coming in, and the board members were like, I think they were really hoping for, like, these cool behind the scenes cloak and dagger kinda stories, and I'm like, "No, if you're doing security right, it's really pretty dull. If you're doing it wrong, it's very exciting." Okay?
Yeah, you don't want security to be exciting as a board or C-suite member, yeah, because yeah, exciting does not equal good at all. Yeah, yeah, and the AI stuff, you brought it up, so I like to talk about it. How are you leveraging AI as part of your workflow other than doing some research on the companies like we talked about?
So I did a fair amount of content for a while, and I'm looking to get back into it here pretty shortly on AI and security specifically, and how AI can enable more people or enable better outcomes in a security environment. And I would say that one of the things that I'm really seeing is, I mean, there's still a real shortage of qualified people to be handling security affairs for customers. And so figuring out how to get more out of those few people is a critical thought process for a security leader. And AI is a great way to do that, right? It can look at a huge amount of intake a huge amount of information, spot anomalies, take the boring tasks off of your people, because if a person can do it, a person can screw it up. But if it's a boring repetitive task, they're going to. So take those boring repetitive tasks and automate them. Put them in some kind of an AI cycle. And that's how you can really get more out of you. Nobody goes into IT because they want to back up information, right? That's not why anybody goes into IT, but it has to be done. So let's figure out a way to automate that and make sure that you're getting the immutable backups that you need from a security and ransomware perspective, without burning your people out, and that frees them up to do much better tasks.
Yeah, and it's funny because everyone's concerned about AI taking jobs. It's kinda like, well, the hammer's gonna take jobs or the wheel is gonna take jobs. Like, yeah, for the people that are maybe relying very lazily on, being the only wheel maker or something like that, when people start learning how to make their own wheels, they're gonna say, "Alright, we don't need you anymore." But if you become so invaluable, to your point about, because you're using AI as the tool that it is, to be better at your job, then you can work on higher level problems. And I think that that's what people are starting to realize. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that are overusing it. We've seen it where some people are running their whole lives through it. Therapist, boyfriend, etc. But that's we won't get into that in this podcast, but yeah, or girlfriend, yeah. But it's basically a tool, and not to be. You mentioned it in the beginning of the episode too. You're actually questioning it, whatever it gives to you. You're not just saying blindly, okay, this is what it says. AI told me to do this, so I'll do it. You're saying, okay, well, what are the sources, and taking, the nugget of what maybe you get from AI. So totally makes sense. And final thought on that is AI security is a data security problem, because it's not everyone thinks like there's special AI. Now there is prompt injection and things that are more advanced. But again, most companies don't have to worry about that right now, especially if they're not creating an AI product from scratch, which, there's only really a few players that are in that space. It's really about where's your data, how is it being protected, things like that. So,
I think it's policy, it's user access, and making sure that your people can't see stuff that they shouldn't see, because I may not find a folder that I have access to by accident, but if I ask AI, it's going to find that folder and it's going to return some answers that maybe my company doesn't want returned to me. But also a policy by the company, to really say, hey, this is what AI can be used for. This is what you should not put into AI, to make sure that people are not doing stupid things.
yeah, AI governance.
Yes. Yep.
That's most of our projects, when around AI. Not that we're doing only AI governance. I mean, when we are touching AI, it's usually AI governance. To start there. So what's a challenge that maybe you and your team have had to solve recently?
Hmm. So certainly part of it is getting outside of our traditional IT group. But I would also say that the other thing that we're really just in general running into difficulty with, we've been very much a referral based organization. So it's been largely on relationships that we already have, that we've built our business. And right now we're really trying to crack the code on how we can find people outside of that network and start to drive conversations with people that we haven't necessarily dealt with before. And so we've tried a couple of things that haven't worked, and spent more money than we probably should have on those things. Um, but you got to fail a couple of times generally before you're going to find the right stuff. And I think we've got some ideas from a marketing perspective on how we can start to reach new audiences in ways that we haven't reached people before.
Yeah. And any suggestions? Where are you looking? I mean, this podcast is one, I guess, right?
Sure.
So, Jack, you got that covered.
Exactly. And I appreciate you having me on for that purpose. We're also, we're looking at how we can leverage, well, first of all, AI search, right? So how we can get AI to consider us as a viable solution when people ask questions about certain things, right?
Yeah, like AI SEO, basically.
Yeah. Which is, I think, a relatively new thing. I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that yet, but it is kind of interesting once you start to have those conversations with AI about whether it would recommend you and why or why not. Um, because all of a sudden you're getting answers about your website and your business that you probably hadn't considered.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And yeah, how to seed that? I've asked our marketing team the same thing. It's not an obvious answer, I don't think.
No. And the other thing is, that I just learned not too long ago, is you can't be signed in as yourself when you ask AI, because it will just please the heck out of you and give you the answers you want to hear. It thinks you want to hear.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people are falling into this trap where the AI is just it's a sycophant, right? It's just saying what you want to hear, echo chamber, like, "Oh yeah, everything you're saying is so brilliant." And yeah, and it's just that's the way it's programmed. It's not really the truth. Yeah. Yeah, so you don't wanna ask like, "Yeah, who are the best, trusted advisors in my area?" It's gonna be, "Well, you're number 1, obviously." Yeah, you're like, let me go on anonymously
And ask it smarter
at this.
questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. But, these solutions, and the challenges in the channel, you've been in the channel for a while. How have you seen it change and evolve?
Well, first of all, I think the smart companies are really starting to look and have been for probably the last 8 years or so, much more at how they get recurring revenue rather than project-based revenue, right? I mean, you and I talked about that before this show um, that a lot of what you're doing is no longer just project-based. It's stuff that's recurring revenue, and I mean, for quite some time now, Wall Street has been valuing a recurring revenue dollar at 3 to 4 times what it values a project dollar at. And so for a lot of the channel companies that started off in, let's say, hardware, the hardware channel, which is a lot of my background, um, weren't really thinking about how they could get better into recurring revenue. And a lot of them were having a hard time, frankly, making the turn.
Mm, yeah, we're seeing that. And, it is you're right, spot on. Everyone wants recurring revenue. I mean, we don't even own software anymore. We just pay a subscription.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Everything by subscription. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, everything is as a service or yeah, infrastructure, everything. So, it's definitely the future, at least for now. I think I don't think we're gonna go back. I mean, having physical copies, like you don't buy a DVD of your games anymore. You don't we own very little these days, unfortunately, but I think most people want it that way because there are advantages too. You amortize the cost and you reduce the risk around having a full-time uh resource or a hardware piece of hardware, etc.
Scale up and scale down easily, predictable costs, right? I mean, it requires fewer support people generally. So there's a lot of really positive things there.
Yeah, there's a reason that it's as popular, not just because the market likes it. And that's our model too. That's what we've moved to. So that's where most of our revenue comes from is recurring. And yeah, we like it. We like it because it's also better for the customers because then, especially from a security perspective, they're not shooting, playing whack a mole. They've got a more coherent and cohesive approach to a program, programmatic approach essentially to their security program, which is what they need. So to be effective. Yeah. And, anything, exciting you about the future looking forward?
I think so. Something that just kind of came to my attention the other day that I think is going to be very interesting to watch, and that is the sudden dramatic spike in DRAM pricing. It's one of those unsexy things that exists everywhere that we use all over the place. Uh, and the AI providers are gobbling up a huge amount of it right now, and it's driving the prices way up.
Are you talking about RAM, like
Yeah,
random access
yeah,
memory?
yeah,
Okay, like memory chips?
yeah. So, like I heard the other day, well, if you look at Dell is talking about increasing prices 15 to 25%. Cisco is talking about price increases. HP is talking about price increases because one of the main manufacturers just got out of the consumer DRAM market so that they could focus on AI, data center RAM. Um, and so what does that mean? For me, it means, well, it's higher capex to acquire equipment now. So do people start to look at that as a service? Can I start to get this as infrastructure as a service? Does it drive up the pricing on the infrastructure as a service? Maybe, but probably not as much as buying the equipment actually. And so until we can right size this DRAM shortage that is starting to really manifest itself, I think we're going to see people trying to solve for how they can mitigate against that cost increase. I think it'll be kind of interesting for our channel.
Well, rare minerals are also, if you look at what's going on geopolitically and how they're controlled, I mean, we're getting to a point where there's bottlenecks, and we saw it with the chips, the AI chips with NVIDIA, the H100, specialized chips that were uh, on back order. And it's really interesting. So that kind of stuff is relevant. It makes you think, how could we repurpose older legacy tech that's just hanging around in data centers in a corner somewhere, you know? And some of the models from an AI perspective are getting more efficient because they have to. I mean, AI is definitely eating the world literally. They're, with the amount of water use, land use now, energy use. Oh yeah. I'm in California, so you wouldn't believe the energy bills and how they've increased in the last even couple years. And a lot of people are saying that's because of AI. It's not that consumers are using more. There's actually probably more renewable energy here, but it's something is consuming all that energy.
Yeah. So I live in the middle of nowhere, Lou. I live in South Central Pennsylvania, and right now data centers are coming in and trying to buy up land. Believe it or not, they're restarting 3 Mile Island,
Yep, I heard about that. I'm old enough to remember that.
which 30 miles from my house.
Jeez.
They're restarting it specifically to power Microsoft's AI. I mean, Microsoft would be 100% of the consumption of that power plant. So it's pretty crazy.
Copilot will still suck.
Ah,
So, yeah, it's absolutely insane the way that, this has changed, but it makes you wonder, is there a bubble out there? Will it, once it definitely gives me a lot of .com, uh, memories, PTSD. I remember that very clearly. I was starting my career and, had seen where tech was like, the panacea, solve all, and there were the internet and all that stuff. And yeah, so we probably will have a correction, I think.
I think so. I started at Cisco in October of 1999. Um, my first stock option struck at $75 a share. And I didn't see that again the whole time I was there. And I was there for 10 years.
Yeah, I just, if you might have noticed recently, they finally reached 80 per share, or like around their peak from the pre-com recently, that's 25 years later, holy.
It's crazy.
So yeah, it is crazy. And how about any personal or even business cybersecurity stories that you have that where cyber might have had a direct impact on your life?
Fortunately, that hasn't happened. I've had a couple of people reach out to me in the last couple of weeks and say, "Hey," both professionally and personally, and say, "Hey, this email doesn't quite look right." And I'll go in and check it out. One was from the Brazilian National University, and another was from a Chilean tour bus company. And I'm like, unless you were using your email to like book a tour bus in Chile, I think you can pretty much figure that that's your agreement. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy too because with AI they can just get better. It used to be the language barrier and things like that, and now that's not an issue.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they're using legitimate domains. I mean, those are legitimate domains that I'm in on.
Yeah, they're compromising. They basically compromise the email domain. The companies don't know, and then they send out on behalf of them. So it's common. It's going to keep happening too. AI is not going to save us from this, unfortunately. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet.
In fact, it's probably exacerbating the problem, if nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. So, Scott, what got you here? Like, how'd you become, a trusted advisor? What was your career path to get here?
So my career started with the military, as you can see by the "I love me" wall behind me. Um, so so I started off. I was a paratrooper for 4 years and went back in as an officer for another three. I learned a whole lot while I was in there, and when I got out, I was looking really for something to do and kind of flailed around for a little while. And I had had a computer in my home in 1977. So when I was still in, like middle school. So it gives you an idea of how old I am. But I was the first one that had a computer and I loved it. And so I just decided, you know what, I love technology. So I need to, fortunately, my wife was a recruiter for a technical company, and she got me a job in sales. And I have just loved it from the very beginning. I picked up on it quickly. It makes sense to me for whatever reason. I very quickly learned, to my earlier point, that going out and just sitting down and and chewing the fat with somebody about the latest, coolest talking frog was not going to get me anywhere. I wasn't going to make many sales doing that. So I needed to learn about business. And I spent a lot of time doing that. I got some really great training with Cisco on how to understand business. And just I was in and out of the channel doing from Cisco. And finally I looked around one day when I was at E Plus and I just said, you know what? I like this aspect, this one telecom agency aspect thing of what I'm doing. And almost everybody that I meet that's doing this is doing it for themselves.
Hmm. Light bulb.
Yeah. I was fortunate to meet my business partner. We hit it off really well. We started having some conversations and we both agreed we wanted to go out on our own. So we got started about 3 years ago. It's been a great ride so far. We've grown tremendously. And we love what we're doing. We love working with the customers we love that we work with. And frankly, we started this whole thing specifically because we had people that we wanted to work with that we wanted to take care of the way we wanted to take care of them, not the way some company that we worked for was going to take care of them.
Right. Right. That's one of the best strengths I think about having your own company where, on the flip side, when you're working for a bigger structure, you're not, able to drive the strategy as much. You're kind of beholden to whatever the culture is. And yeah, so having your own, you can call the shots, or being in a smaller structure, you have more influence. So
Exactly.
that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys you've been around for how long?
We've been in business for just shy of 3 years.
That's awesome. And CloudNow Consulting?
Yes, CloudNow Consulting. So we went through. My wife and I went out to dinner one night and just started brainstorming on names and I am in back and forth with my business partner and by the time we were done with dinner, we had come up with CloudNow Consulting and we've been able to trademark it. So it's an official trademark registered with the patent office. So nobody can take it away from us, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you can go after them. You can send cease and desist letters.
I just you get Disney's attorneys on my side, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You just now need to pay multiple millions of dollars and, house, a small building of attorneys to, just spend their time doing that. That's great though. It's excellent. And that you've turned that love for technology into a career. And especially I think your brain probably started to get wired like mine did back early days of computing. Because that's either you took to it or you didn't in the beginning because it was a lot harder. There were memory and storage. I mean, storage was non-existent. It was basically ephemeral. You would turn the computer off and then whatever you were working on just went away.
Yeah.
Unless, yeah, floppy, depending on how much money your parents had spent on that computer. I I didn't get a floppy disk for a while, so I think the biggest storage unit I had was a cassette
The
deck.
threat. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Commodore. Was it a Commodore?
Yep, that's right. That's right. That's my Christmas gift to myself. There's a new manufacturer that owns, I think, the rights to Commodore now, and I'm getting a Commodore 64 replica.
Wow, that is cool.
Yeah, I'll send you the link after this. Maybe we'll put it in the YouTube comments
There you
or
go.
something. How about what you do outside of work, Scott?
Yeah, so, I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm a big family guy. We do a lot of traveling. So I'm fortunate in that my wife's, mother emigrated from Norway, before she was born. So, but we've maintained relationships with a lot of her family over in Norway. So we've been able to travel over in Europe because they have homes various places around Europe as well as in Norway. Um, so we really enjoy the travel. We really enjoy. I've got a couple of dogs, I just uh, it's either family time or I'm traveling.
That's awesome. That's really good. Great. Well, listen, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so you can reach me through LinkedIn. I'm all in LinkedIn pretty much every day. So just look up Scott Porter and CloudNow Consulting. I'm in York, Pennsylvania, if you're trying to figure out which Scott Porter it is. But you can also go out to cloudnowconsulting.com. We've got a nice little website. And if you want me to reach back out to you, just fill out the form and I'll get right back to you.
Great. Well, Scott Porter, thank you. It's been a real pleasure learning about your journey, learning about your approach, seeing what you're doing with CloudNow. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you to those that are watching and are listening. If you learned something today, laughed, had fun, please tell someone about this podcast. Thanks again, Scott. And this has been another exciting episode of Channel Security Secrets. See you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Channel Security Secrets. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes, guest info, and more episodes, visit us at channelsecuritysecrets.com. Channel Security Secrets is sponsored by Cyber Defense Group. When it comes to protecting your business, don't settle for reactive. Partner with experts who build resilience from the ground up.